Welcome, everybody, to the Don Lemon Show. Ms. Peppermint is an American actress, a singer, a songwriter, transgender activist, and a legendary drag entertainer. She has a new film premiering this weekend titled A Deeper Love and the Story of Miss Peppermint. And I forgot, she's also my friend. Hi, Miss Peppermint. How you doing?
Hey, Don. I am fantastic. I'm so happy to be with you.
You know what? I was laughing with my crew, and we were saying with the producers on the show, I said, Miss Peppermint has more lives than a cat. I've seen her through a lot of iterations, but you're always working. You're always doing something.
Yeah, honey, I've seen you at all hours of the night. I've been in this bar, I've been in this part of town, I've had this show, uptown, downtown,
Don't give away
DC,
secrets,
everywhere.
Peppermint. We saw each other on the steps of the Capitol.
We
So
sure did. On what a day.
yeah, I know. And that's when I said, I got to get you on the show and we got to talk about this stuff. So can we
Yeah.
talk some news?
Let's go in. Let's go in.
So Peppermint, SCOTUS is taking up this conversion therapy this week. I don't know if you heard about it. The Supreme Court heard
Sure did.
oral arguments for Childs versus Salazar. It's a case that could very likely legalize conversion therapy for gay and transgender Americans. The legal battle, it centers on a Christian therapist who says that her free speech rights have been violated by a Colorado law barring mental health professionals from seeking to change a minor's sexual orientation or gender identity. I mean, do you think conversion therapy bans violate the First Amendment? Even if they do, is that a violation worth it? Because you're protecting kids and teens from the beatings and the torture that are so often associated with conversion therapy.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm not a legal scholar, and I know that there's more than one way to skin a cat, if it were. I know that there are different tactics and strategies that legal experts use in order to get to the result that we want, which in this case is no conversion therapy. All I know is that conversion therapy is harmful. We've seen it throughout, in our own lifetimes. This isn't even something that's extremely historic that they're also trying to chip away at, like, interracial marriage or, like slavery. They're like starting to talk about how good that was, But with conversion therapy, even as recently as into the mid to late 2017, we still had cases that we were hearing about where people were, harming themselves and harming other people because of of what they were, the trauma that they were experiencing through conversion therapy. And honey, we've all seen every daytime talk show where on Friday, Jimmy is meeting us with his wife and he calls himself an ex-gay because he went through conversion therapy. And then by next Monday, he's in there with his new husband, Butch. And, we know it. We've seen this story. So It's not useful. It's not an infringement on somebody else's rights if you are, or especially a First Amendment right. You can say anything you want, but if you are a therapist, I think that your duties, your actual duties, any type of oath or a pledge that you may take to do no harm and as a medical professional are important. And that's the key. These conversion therapists are not medical professionals. These are priests who may take a counseling course over the weekend. And so they're not, many of them are not actually qualified to be.
They're praying the gay away.
They're praying the gay away, and they do the
gay away.
Yeah.
But you know what? You're so right when you say that, because this is my wife, and I've been, I'm not gay no more. Remember that meme that was going around the internet? I'm not gay anymore. And then on Friday or Saturday night, they're at Horse Meat Disco in Brooklyn with all the boys with their shirts off, dancing. Ms. Peppermint, let's talk about MAGA's hatred for transgender people. Why do MAGA Republicans hate trans Americans so much? You saw what Donald Trump did. He's targeted transgender Americans. You saw that ad. It was like the number one most successful political ad during the 2024 campaign. It was the most successful political ad in history, I'm told. So why do you think he is? His executive orders against, non-binary people and transgender people? What's up with that?
I think that not only are there all these executive orders, but there are over 500 pieces of anti-LGBT, mostly anti-trans legislation in our country, which has been a trend over the past couple of years. And this was not happening as recently as 2020, 2021 is when we started to see these types of anti-trans laws popping up, everything from bans in sports to obviously bans in military, bathroom bans, all types of things. And I think on the short answer is because most people don't personally know someone who's trans, and so we are an easy target. And one thing that in a fascist regime, in a corporatist regime, in this current administration, that they need, and if you notice, everything is grievance, everything is a complaint, everything is just I'm angry about this group of people. There's not really any actual solutions that address what is happening systemically. If you're upset about your healthcare, it's probably not another human being. Let's look at the companies that are setting the prices of healthcare. Don't look at the people that are also receiving gender affirming care. And most people don't know someone who's trans personally, so it's easy to discriminate against us, especially if the administration is serving us up on a silver platter. There's no one to fight back against. And the problem is many folks, especially in mainstream media, they're taking the bait as well. They're posting these stories and they're sort of perpetuating this conversation without involving trans people, which is why I'm just grateful that we're able to have this conversation. You said
Well,
that it was the number one ad, but we also know that in the red states, it's also the number one most growing porn searches are trans porn. And so there is a correlation between how these people really feel about us and how they probably feel about themselves.
yeah, with that said, Peppermint, I mean, we know it's the number one search porn in red areas, right? Rural MAGA areas. And we know, did you see the panel of dolls with Laverne
Oh,
Cox?
did I see the pan? Honey, they invoked me. Yes, I saw the
I know,
panel.
and I asked you, I wanted to do a panel of trans women, but you're like, I understand. I don't do panels because I don't like to be arguing with people
Right.
on
Well,
panels.
I didn't know it's trans women. I would gladly do a trans women panel. I just didn't want to do like one trans versus 20 MAGA.
Oh
You
no,
know
we
what I
don't do
mean?
that here. We don't.
Yeah,
We
no,
do
no.
not do that here. I wanted to do it with you and with TS and with Laverne if
I
she
would
would
do
come
it.
on,
I
and
would do it. And
with
I know that
Angelica
they would. I love
Ross.
those are my
Yeah,
sisters.
to
I
just
love
talk about
them.
like how the transgender community is being targeted right now. But let's
Let's
just be
do it.
honest right now.
Mhm.
Transgender women will never ever have trouble finding boyfriends and partners as long as there are some really conservative men out there. Tell the truth, Peppermint.
Not you spilling way too much tea this morning. Yeah, you that's true. There I think listen, all types of men and all types of people are interested in trans people, and trans women are come in all shapes, sizes, and sexualities. That's had to be said first. But you are right. I think that has something to do with there are a lot of conservative men. Obviously, we are in their searches, and there are a lot of conservative men who are really interested in trans women. Sometimes they're upfront with being conservative, sometimes that's obvious, and sometimes it's not. But I think that has a lot to do with maybe the grass is greener on the other side. You want what you're being told you can't have. I think that's part of the attraction. It's definitely like a temptation or it's sort of taboo,
Taboo.
right? Yeah,
Jinx.
yeah. Hello. But beyond that, I have to say that in my experience, and this is not like a hard fast rule, but in my experience, especially today, we can see that there's a lot of barriers that trans people are facing. There's a lot of challenges, and when anybody faces and then overcomes challenges, that hopefully makes them a better person. So if trans people are facing challenges and overcoming them, which we are, just by living our lives, with the high rate of murder, like interpersonally, there's a high rate of murder against trans women, specifically Black trans women. But then also our state, our country is making all these laws and doing all these things. Our president is like the number one ad he's gotten. We have not been able to stay out of their mouths since the election. We're like the top five topic for the conservatives. And considering how little of portion of the population we are. And I think that when you overcome all those types of things, all that adversity, it can make you a better person. So if that's true, then trans people have we have come into our own. We're able to understand and realize how we as individuals relate to this thing called gender. And believe it or not, gender is can be a prison for a lot of people. These rules of what a man's supposed to be and what a woman's supposed to be, we saw with the Republicans and the military how they like having this conversation who's supposed to be manly, but it can be for many people stifling and sort of a prison to have to stick to these rules. If you don't want to wear a certain thing or act a certain way, you should be free to do that, especially in this country. And trans people can show us a way outside of that. And I think there's a lot of resentment, but for the men who are attracted to us, it also is a sense of freedom. I feel so liberated in being able to be finally who I am and live in my truth. And if you are somebody who's a part of a very conservative, restricted, always have to stay in line kind of life, then you're attracted to people who are just free. And I think that's ultimately why they want to spend so much time around us.
Well, and yeah, and plus they just think you're hot.
And
They
we're
think you're
hot.
fine. Yeah, I no, seriously, but they can't. They can never admit that because they're so inhibited, or they're so in the closet. But it has to be. I mean, it's kind of. It's not kind of. I'm insulted. I don't know if you are. Like, why you want to take agency and the rights away from trans women or trans people? You pretend that you're against them, but you're getting your jollies, searching online or being in a relationship with them. Have you ever been in a relationship and or hey, someone said that they were conservative and you had to deal with it, or MAGA?
Well, I have been in lots of situations, but I've never been in a relationship. That's daytime talk.
Girl.
It is daytime. Really been had the opportunity to like interview these people and like have like a long conversation. There are people that if I look back on them, I would probably put them on like, oh, I've got my suspicions, but these are, arrangements and situations where it's like, there's not as much talking going on and getting to know each other on a deeper level. Um, but so I mean, that's that. But I've witnessed so many of my girlfriends in these situations, certainly. But I do want to say one thing that the attitude towards trans women isn't just reflected in MAGA. MAGA and Republican, conservative, that's obviously a thing. We know it with the porn searches and the 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 closeted sort of nature creeping around. But I do want to say that like many of the men that my girlfriends have talked to and we've shared stories about are also they're conservative even if they're not MAGA. A lot of men who are like really macho, even if they're like regardless of how they are politically, even in the Black community, who you might not assume would be MAGA, um, can still have a very conservative attitude towards homosexuality and transness, even though on all other issues they may be more liberal or, what have you. And so I think it's really the streak of conservatism and how it shows up in Black communities and white communities, but it still results in discrimination. So what we see is people use the power that they have access to in the city, in the inner cities, and maybe in amongst communities of color and urban communities. There's not a lot of politicians necessarily running around there. So these guys use the power that they have access to, which is a social power, and then also sometimes, sadly enough, a power of physical violence that many men often use. But then
Mhm.
when it comes to the flip side with people who are MAGA, they're in control right now. And so they can wield the power of the state. The president, they can use legislation. They don't have to go out in the street and start beating people up. They can just try to punish us in that way. So the impact is different, but it's still the same energy.
Yeah, thank you for answering that. And look, you're so much more than someone who can talk about these issues of transgender. Look, but you're out here working in the world, and you're doing things. So, look, the National Guard troops are in Chicago and Portland. 500 National Guard members arrived in Chicago. They're mobilized there. They said it's initially for 60 days, but anyway, this is an ongoing thing. There's been a lawsuit filed by the governor. When you are you watching these images, Peppermint, on television and through your feed of people being beaten up and roughed up and what's happening on city streets right now?
Yes, that poor Black child, these children being dragged out of their beds and zip tied. I can't even think of a situation where it would ever be, unless it was like vampires or zombies. I can't think of a single situation where it's necessary to zip tie children, and especially by law enforcement. And then beyond that, the heartbreaking image, which I think will go down in terms of photojournalism. I saw that you shared it. I also shared it as the priest, or the clergyman or the
Yeah, that
minister.
was in the face
Um,
with the
yeah,
rubber
getting
bullet
hit
or
in the
whatever.
face with a rubber bullet, and that it's just there's a still image that is just so heartbreaking, and it really speaks to the moment. The two opposite ends of how, like, a religious figure, how magnanimous and generous they're expected to be, versus these sort of like wannabe soldiers that are poorly trained. I'm sure you've seen those videos of them fumbling with their guns, couldn't put their bullets in the clip, and their
Yeah.
shoes are falling off, and their butt cracks. It looks like plumbers that have been given, you know, carte blanche.
So, do you think Donald Trump is trying to start a civil war?
I think that's an important point and a good question, and I think that a civil war could happen. I'm not sure exactly what that's what they want to do, but I do think that one thing that people do need to educate themselves on are the real definition of fascism, corporatism, and the actual definition of like all these terms, and like read our people need to read a book, because there was an they removed access to this information from our schools for decades. So people are not that educated on how to respond and react to these things that are happening. And I do think that what Donald Trump and what this administration is doing is textbook, in line with what other regimes and administrations in this country and other country have tried to do when they use the power of the state to extract money, and all of the wealth goes in one direction. Prices only get higher. I remember there was a time where prices would go up and they would go back down. Now it just goes one direction.
Right.
And when that's happening, people are going to get upset. We will notice when we can't afford our rent, can't afford our food, can't afford our things, but we're feeling strapped. And the only way to distract them from that is to give them an enemy. It's the people, it's the immigrants, it's the this, it's the that, and blaming the price of eggs or whatever on these groups of people. And people are, unfortunately, they fall for it quite easily because they're really desperate to have an answer, and it's so
Trans
much
people have
easier.
nothing to do with their like trans people aren't raising the price of their eggs or their gas, and you know
Honey,
what I'm saying?
at
There's nothing to
all.
affect their lives.
Girl. So a civil war or continued violence could happen, because people are angry, and we're seeing. I know we're feeling it. I'm upset. I feel this tension. I don't can't afford this and that. Prices are wild. I'm stressed. I feel uncertain, and I know that's what these people are feeling. These people on the other side of the aisle, the voters, the everyday citizens. That's at the core. They're feeling like there's not enough left. Even with the race issues where they're talking about the great replacement theory, it all boils down to, in this country, you don't feel like you're getting your fair share. And everyone is feeling that way. And so we have to look at the people who have more than one share. And it's not
Yeah,
the trans people or the immigrants.
yeah. So, let's can we talk about Deeper Love, what you're doing?
Oh
Deeper
my
Love
gosh. Yes.
is the story of Miss Peppermint, and I understand that this film is a raw and intimate portrait tracing your rise as a Black trans icon from Big Apple bars to RuPaul's Drag Race and Broadway, from Big Apple bars, where I got to meet you, from RuPaul's Drag Race and Broadway. So, what was the filmmaking process like for you?
It was raw, as you said, and irritating at times. I mean, it's a documentary, and so like they were not only at my shows, at the bar, at the this, but they were also at my in my house. And in the morning,
Really?
and I'm like, oh, darling, please let me get myself together. And so that's irritating. And we filmed over 10 years, and it's my ups, my downs, my highs, my
Really? I
lows.
didn't know that.
Yeah.
10 years?
I would love to invite you to come and see it. Well, offline. It's this weekend, but I can also get you a copy if you're not able to, at Newfest. And it started as a friend with a camcorder, not a cam, whatever. A friend with a camera came, and I was like, film my show and watch me go do this speech for this charity event during the day. That was 10 years ago, and then 10 years later, we finally finished filming. The film is ready, and I'm just really happy to share it with the world. And in a time where we've seen from statistics like from organizations like GLAAD, on which that's the board on which I serve, that LGBTQ characters and presence stories in entertainment are lacking. There's less and less every year since like 2021, 2022. There's less this year than there were last year, and it's a pattern. And so I think uplifting trans people, including my own voice, because I feel like I have something to contribute, is really important at this time. So I'm grateful that you came on and asked me about it.
Well, I'm so happy that you are thriving and that trans women are out here thriving and having great success, despite all of the things that are coming at them, the slings and arrows that are coming at you guys. And I mean, you ladies and guys, trans people. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's just, I don't understand why we, meaning the country or people in this country, are going after the people who have the least agency in society. And I mean, don't be offended, but trans people are not a huge part of the population. You know what I'm saying?
It's true. It's
Right.
true. There
Yeah.
are more sex offenders in different positions of power in this country convicted than there are trans athletes.
Now you're spilling the tea. Can I ask you? But what I love about you is that you hold people to account, and you are not afraid to say your piece as it relates to Caitlyn Jenner.
Yeah, I've only met her a couple of times, and the time where I was connected to her was when she had first come out, and I wanted to be really supportive because I do believe that
You
having
were.
different voices and trans people is important. Like the more visibility we have, the better. But then I started to see, obviously, her shift or her revealing more about who she really is. And I think at the end of the day, there are people, regardless of who you are, that are there's some people that are obsessed with getting more power and sort of aligning themselves with power and those in power. And there are people who maybe for various reasons feel like they as individuals don't see their footing in the next chapter. And so they desperately grasp onto these discriminatory policies and ways of interacting. It's puzzling to me when conservative trans women do. Then there's trans women that are conservative, period. But that when they do it and throw their communities under the bus and attack each other, but it really is. I view it sort of in the same way that I'm viewing other, people who are anti-trans, who aren't trans, like cis people who are anti-trans, like certain children's book authors from across the pond. And really, as much as they talk about wanting to protect women, it really is about protecting the position that women currently have in this country in relation to the men who are in power. Because everything that they do, if you follow it to its logical conclusion, it just upholds the system of patriarchy that we're in, where the women will not get any further than they already have. And you cannot blame trans women for the impacts of overall of the patriarchy in general, especially if you're not willing to acknowledge the patriarchy and the misogynist way that many of these men, I mean, you just saw, the men in power in our country were speaking in front of the military and basically denigrating the women and the female officers in the military, and so like clearly they don't have your best interests at heart as women.
No.
And I think ultimately trans people, whether cis women or conservative trans women want to admit it or not, trans women in particular, um, transphobia and homophobia are related to misogyny. Whether
Mhm.
you want to admit it or not, it's true because it
Yeah.
has to do with what we think a man should be and how women should be treated.
Yeah.
And
What we
those
think
things are all
gender roles.
interconnected.
Yeah. What thing we think gender roles should be in society. Hey,
Mhm.
Peppermint, Miss Peppermint. I told you I was going to get
Done.
you on here. Thank you. And will you come back and we can have a real conversation with
We'll do
like
it.
not that this one wasn't real. I mean that we can actually have a conversation that you don't see in most places regarding, the dolls. Okay.
100%. 100%.
So make sure you go see Deeper Love, the story of Miss Peppermint. And it is an intimate, raw portrait tracing her rise as a Black trans icon from Big Apple bars to RuPaul's Drag Race and Broadway and beyond. And now she's in a film. So filmmaking. Thank you, Miss Peppermint. Good to see you.
Thank you, baby. Good to see you too.
Thanks everyone for watching. Your support means the world to us. So make sure you hit the like button and you subscribe to our channel to make sure that you never ever miss a video. We're live every day, 10 a.m. Eastern time. We drop even more content at 2 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Eastern. And if you want more Don Lemon Show content, we'd love for you to become a member of the Lemon community, where you will receive access to special community posts. You'll get exclusive content and members-only live shows. So head over to our channel page or click the join button on this video. Again, thank you for watching. We appreciate your love and your support, and we will see you next time.